Hello there, YouTube. This is Sibbles and Bits back at it again with another Sit Down Saturday. This time, we're going to be covering Path of Exile 2. Now, as some of you guys might know, at the time of the release of this video, Path of Exile 2 has not yet been released. It is announced for December 6th, 2024, which is in a couple of weeks from the date of this video. But I figured that since, of course, as with all Sit Down Saturdays, if I'm going to sit down and actually look into something in depth, I might as well record my thoughts and share it with you guys in case you guys are interested. Path of Exile is honestly one of my favorite games of all time. It is my most played game on Steam by a magnitude of 5 times the second place, and that's just counting the hours that were after the 1.0 release and it was released onto Steam. So naturally, when Path of Exile 2 was announced, and they announced that it was not only going to be more Path of Exile, but honestly a completely mechanically similar but different Path of Exile, I'm all about discovery and spreadsheet warring and making builds that, just to see if stuff works so that I understand how the mechanics work. For instance, did you know that you can both be in the health threshold of low life and full life at the same time in Path of Exile 1? The wiki sure as hell doesn't. Anyways, enough gushing about Path of Exile, and we'll go on to our topic for today, which is one of the new keystones that they announced, which is Giant's Blood. Giant's Blood is a keystone that allows us to dual wield, or wield in one hand more specifically, two-handed maces, axes, or swords, with the trade-off that it doubles the attribute requirement to do so. This is where we have to start diverging between the Path of Exile 1 that we know and the Path of Exile 2 that we do not know. So we will first start with things that we know. As stated on the node, we can only dual wield two-handed maces, axes, and swords. We don't know if two-handed spears or flails are in the game, but even if they were, they'd be off the menu, at least as of right now. And we cannot dual wield quarterstaffs. Sorry, monk. Regardless of that, it would be kind of hard without the Scion middle section for you to actually grab relevant staff nodes and get all the way down to where the node is. I guess that's conjecture, not stuff that we know. Obviously, this enables you to dual wield two-handed weapons. It enables you to use a two-handed weapon and a shield. One other thing that I do want to point out is the attribute nodes that you use to travel throughout the tree have been reduced down to 5. So the attribute requirement might actually be a significant deterrent. Two-handed weapons, generally speaking, have 2 times the stats of one-handed weapons, and they are able to get 2 sockets for use with runes or soul cores in the endgame. Runes and soul cores are things that you can put into weapons or armor, but since we're talking about weapons, we'll refer to those benefits to increase damage and offensive stats. In the late game, soul cores are basically runes, except that they have access to more specific stats, such as 15 spirit, which we use to activate permanently on abilities like permanent minions, trigger gems, auras. It can also have critical strike multiplier on it, and it can have attack speed. If we are wielding a two-handed weapon and a shield, we get access to an extra rune slot. If we are dual wielding two-handers, we get access to a extra 2 rune slots that we would normally not get, which is something that might possibly be overlooked. Now we're going to go on to conjecture. There's going to be a lot of stuff in here simply because there's a lot of stuff that we don't know how it works. We can extrapolate quite a bit from Path of Exile 1, but again, Path of Exile 2 is a completely different beast. We've seen tons of reworks of systems such as bleeds, poisons, block, etc. already. So to assume that it's going to be a one-for-one comparison would honestly be ill-advised. So we're going to list things that are relevant in Path of Exile 1 or things that we don't quite know are confirmed in Path of Exile 2 that may be relevant to this discussion. So first off, the exact discrepancy between two-handed weapons in Path of Exile 2 versus one-handed weapons in Path of Exile 2. We can use some examples here, such as these two one-handed weapons and two-handed weapons on the Path of Exile trade website for Path of Exile 1. Granted that A, these are obviously Path of Exile 1 items with Path of Exile 1 mods, but they also have access to Path of Exile 1 super crafting capabilities that we may or may not have in the other game. But when you calculate, just take a look at the physical DPS, you can go ahead and see that the two-handed weapon is indeed approximately twice as much damage as the one-handed weapon, and they are relatively similar in the mods that they have. Another thing that we can take a look at is in the actual video that GGG provided showing off this, we take a two-handed weapon and replace a one-handed weapon, and the one-handed weapon that we are replacing has about 109 physical DPS, whereas the two-handed weapon that we are placing into its slot has almost 283 physical DPS, which is almost triple the damage. Again, these stats aren't exactly like one for one, and then on top of that, you're looking at, okay, so the two-handed mace that we're using is also like 4 to 5 levels above the one-handed mace. But if we safely assume that we're going to be dealing approximately 100% more damage, to put it in PoE terms, or double the damage, then that is obviously a huge benefit that we are going to get from wielding a two-hander versus a one-hander. Other things that we don't know about is that in Path of Exile, many items have implicit modifiers, which is a special bonus that is native to that weapon that cannot be altered in PoE 2, so we've been told at least as of right now. In Path of Exile 1, we've got mods like simply increased attack speed or increased AoE, increased stun damage, and things like that. So what bases are present and what benefits that they give can also possibly dictate what we would want to dual wield. Also looking at skill interactions and how they interact with dual wielding. Are we going to be able to use both mace skills and axe skills if we are dual wielding one of each? Loads of unique interactions that we don't even know exist yet. I don't think that they've shown off, well, they've physically shown off some two-handed uniques, but as far as like things that we know that we'd be able to utilize or abuse by being able to dual wield two of them or dual wield or hold one in a hand with a shield, we don't have access to that yet. I did take a look through the Path of Exile 1 wiki for some examples of stuff that we could potentially use if they somehow exist, and we already know that even if they get ported over, they're not going to be exactly one for one anyways. They've done, again, major changes to the items that they have ported over, but looking at things such as Ingamahu's Flame, which does not specify hits with this weapon, and this is the sort of thing that we're looking for. Is there a way that we can possibly dual wield two weapons and get a combination of effects going? Because unfortunately, a large majority of the unique weapons that we run into, like Rakiyanga's, is hits with this weapon do blank, or when you hit with this weapon do blank, or support gems in this weapon, which obviously is a completely different mechanic now in PoE 2. So looking for global bonuses such as physical damage converted to fire damage, damage penetrates, fire resistance, having a trigger on hit that does not actually require you to hit with that weapon. These are the kind of things that we're looking for. Another such case is Brain Rattler, which has, some middling damage, gives you a 50% chance to shock, converts 50% of your damage into lightning damage, and hits with this weapon, even though this is this weapon, you'll be wielding two of them, theoretically speaking. Shock enemies as though dealing 3 times more damage. Damage penetrates extra lightning resistance. Enemies you shock have reduced cast speed, reduced movement speed. Again, I don't think that things like this are going to directly port one for one because of the fact that, well, if you put all that on an enemy, I don't know, it'd be a very good support character. Support characters are much better in this game now. Also, if you are one of the people who seem to think that Starforge is going to somehow make it into Path of Exile 2, myself not being one of them, it's just a great DPS item that also has a life roll on it. So you get that benefit as well as the 20% increased area for attacks. You'd potentially be able to double dip on that and have some huge AoE for your sword skills, assuming that sword skills use AoE in this game. Other than that, I think that the main benefit that you would get out of this is being able to utilize a two-hander with a shield. Now, since you have the weapon swap mechanic, some people might say, well, you could have the shield on your back and use that for the raised shield for a 100% block chance. If you have the shield on you at all times, you would get access to the percent block chance that is still on shields, and you would not have to pay the air quotes time cost of switching weapons when you go to raise shield, which again may or may not actually still be in the game, but it was when they first showed off the idea of swapping weapons. All in all, I think that it's a very interesting keystone, but I don't think that it's going to cause necessarily as big of a splash with the stuff that we have on hand right now. When we start looking at stuffs like uniques, how viable is it to get to dual wielding and two-handed nodes in the game? Previously, that was only available to Wings of Entropy in Path of Exile 1, which the weapon itself got power crept to all bejesus, but it was definitely a moderately powerful build. I certainly look forward to playing around with it and figuring out what exactly I can do. What about you guys? Are you guys interested in this notable? Are you guys even interested in PoE 2? What are your guys' thoughts about this? So I'm going to go ahead and head off. Catch you guys next week with some more Path of Exile 2 discussion. If you have anything for me, be it questions, comments, concerns, misplay alerts, be sure to put those down in the comments below. And until next time, I will catch you guys around.